liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
You're tapped in, so let's get right to it. Ibrahim Traore, Captain Ibrahim Traore, is in the news again today, and that's only because of an attack piece put out there by Al Jazeera. Okay, now I have to say, man, that this is much. You know, it's much. Why Al Jazeera would do that? There's a lot of reasons why. You know, and it can be argued that it could be as a result of the measures Captain Traore is taking in Burkina Faso. And those measures, some of them, a lot of people are saying, especially Muslims, that they are unjust and they are moves that have been taken against Islam and Sharia law. All right. Now, I want to cover that. You know, I'm going to cover, you know, that as well. Just so you know that Al Jazeera, it can be said, is not a Western media outlet, all right, for news and information. It is not. Al Jazeera is Qatari state-funded and state-controlled, okay? It was founded in 1996 explicitly as a non-Western alternative voice from the Arab world, all right? The U.S. Department of Justice itself has determined the network is controlled and funded by the government of Qatar. Now, I don't necessarily buy that or say it, well, you know, would think that that would be the truth because the U.S. government is saying everyone, hey, they're not ours, you know, and however, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all these countries are aligned in such a way with the United States and Israel, you can't really determine who's running what over there. So I just want to throw that out there, okay? But in any respect, so, you know, it's claimed, U.S. government is claiming this as well as the Qatari state, that it is not Western media. It's a Gulf state media, and that distinction matters, all right? At least that's what they're saying, all right? That it matters between differentiating the two. Non-Western, but Gulf state media for Arabs, all right? That's what they want us to know, you know, so I think a lot of people, I don't know if they necessarily call it the West or attached to Western media, but it is what it is, all right? Now, here's the thing. The attack on Traore, I think, is as a result of, again, the decision he made to ban Sharia law from being implemented in Burkina Faso and declaring that the government is secular. You know what I mean? Again, if you ask me, that's good governance for a lot of reasons. You know, I won't get into right now, but if you come in the comments and ask me why my stance is as it is, I can express that to you plainly. All right, I can give it to you plainly. All right. Now, speaking of Ibrahim Traore, again, this is something that a lot of people are not paying attention to. He's being attacked on all fronts. Al Jazeera is just another one of those attacks, but coming from a different angle. All right. You have the French, you have the EU, you have the United States, you have the so-called terrorists or jihadists. All right. Now you have Al Jazeera, you know, and Al Jazeera has decided to go in on Ibrahim, questioning his credibility in terms of governance and what he's actually doing and bringing to the Burkina Faso people. All right. That's just it. You know, Ibrahim Traore did come into power in a coup back in September 2022. He was then a 34-year-old army captain nobody outside of Burkina Faso had heard of. He's now a 39-year-old, and he's still in control of that country and doing great things, I might add. All right. Now, in under 4 years, the world has had to pay attention. It had to, because of what he implemented and the steps and moves he took and made to get rid of a lot of what he and others saw the problem in Burkina Faso to be. All right. And we'll get to that. We will get to that. All right. Now, in under 4 years, the world has had to pay attention. No doubt about that. There is food self-sufficiency, which was achieved in Burkina Faso in 2025. Now, the French, Europeans, the UK, the United States, they've all been there for decades. And no such thing as food self-sufficiency was ever created. They have that now, that the Europeans are gone, that the Americans are gone. They have that now. And that's just one of many things they now have as a result of taking control of their country. All right. So, yeah, he did help establish food self-sufficiency, which, again, was achieved in 2025. He expanded irrigation and agro-processing. All right. French troops were expelled, as well as French diplomats, and cutting ties with French politicians and the French political base. All right. Those are facts. All right. So the French troops were expelled, and a country that refused to keep bleeding through foreign dependency, began to form its own independence and stand on or create for itself sovereignty in the realest sense. So even his critics admit his popularity has soared. And at President Mohamed's inauguration in Ghana, he got the loudest applause of every head of state in the room. What does that tell you? Now, I'll get to that. Now, this is where it gets real. And we're expounding upon Captain Ibrahim Traore, all right? Traore is a Muslim leading a majority Muslim country, people, right? And he stood up and said that there will never be Sharia law in Burkina Faso because no religious law stands above the Constitution, is what he said, all right? Now, he ordered hundreds of Burkina-based studying Islamic law abroad, many in Saudi Arabia, to come home or lose their citizenship. And this was actually done maybe a couple of weeks ago. And I'll more than likely do a piece on that to find out whether or not those students returned home or did they decide to stay. All right. Now, when Imam MOHAMED KINDO, ISHAQ KINDO, criticized the nation, he was arrested. But it was more than that in terms of why he was arrested. It really was. And at that time, it had nothing to do with the students who were studying abroad. That was the reason for Imam KINDO's arrest. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. But anyway, KINDO criticized that legislation. He was arrested. When his supporters gathered to demand his release, the largest Sunni mosque in OUAGADOUGOU got shut down. Now, as a result of that, there was real blowback. And, let's not pretend that it wasn't or that it isn't as a result of that move. Now, couple that with the fact that he intentionally went and dismantled what Europeans call democracy in Burkina Faso. That was another issue for Europeans. They got to talking about, hey, we got to go in there and restore democracy in a sovereign nation. That was the talk initially. France leading the charge in America, but for whatever reason, how they were able to quash that and remove that from the table where it became a non-issue, I don't know, but they successfully did that. They did that exact thing and told them, hey, we govern ourselves. We are a sovereign nation. We don't have to do what you say or do what you like. What we're doing serves us. We're removing certain aspects of politics and ways of living that we find detrimental to the people in Burkina Faso. Plain and simple, But anyway, he told his own people to forget about it for now. That's democracy. Because from where he sits, the version of democracy the West kept selling Africa didn't build anything. Was he wrong? They're just now receiving infrastructure in terms of roads in Burkina Faso. This is 2026. Burkina Faso, a country rich with gold, and other resources, okay? Did not have roads, did not have hospitals, schools, colleges, didn't have much of anything. But France was pillaging the gold from the country. Billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in gold. Burkina Faso, before Captain Ibrahim Traore, reaped none of that. Maybe 10%. But not only that, any money that they did receive as a result of it, guess what? Those coffers, or that supposedly what was supposed to belong to Burkina Faso as a part of this gold issue or agreement, was housed in France. And France decided as to whether or not they can have access to it. Go figure. All right, go figure. But anyway, that did occur. Now, you know, he's saying, man, look, we're going to end Western democracy. It has not worked for us. It has not given us anything. We have not benefited as a result of it. All right? That's simple. That simple. But he left the door open for coups. Anyway, that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. Well, excuse me. What they're saying, or what they should say, is the reason for him dismantling democracy was so that he could close the door to future coup attempts. Because in his thinking, in his mind, democracy, Western democracy, set up these opportunities for these coups to continue to happen. So by removing democracy as a political platform or whatever, he effectively, and he said this, was shutting the door, all right, to that sort of behavior and, you know, those types of activities, all right? That's what he did. So anyway, you know, the West kept selling Africa that BS, and it didn't build anything. And again, all it did was left the door open for coups. That's it. Foreign interference, that's another thing. And leaders who served outside interests over their own citizens. That would be these puppet governments. These guys who've been in power 50, 60 years. They're about 100 years old. And every time you see them, they can barely walk. But most of the time when you see them, they're doing photo ops with the French president, Macron. And also tap dancing and doing whatever Macron and France tells them to do. That's a fact. All right, he's not hiding that position, though, that his stance is democracy's done here in Burkina Faso. All right, he's saying it plainly that this is a revolution, a revolutionary phase, not a democratic one. All right, and the results: food security, sovereignty, an army pushing back, an insurgency are the argument. That is his argument that he's been placing before all of those who are watching. So then steps in Al Jazeera. All right, Al Jazeera drops this piece calling it a reality test. All right, not a profile, not a balanced report. All right, but a framing built around doubt. And I have that report. I'm going to present it to you guys in a hot second. Again, a framing that was built around doubt. You know, is his popularity real? You know what I mean? Can it survive? Will this all fall apart? And, you know, I don't know. You know, I have to ask this question out loud. Why now? Why now? Why is Al Jazeera just now doing this and saying all these things? Why? Is it because Traore is cutting off the pipeline of Gulf-funded Islamic education? Could that be it? Could that be it? Is it because he's confronting clerics trained and financed through Saudi Arabia and Gulf networks? That could be it. That could be it. That Gulf network would be a Qatari state-funded outlet which runs a, you know, runs a piece on Captain Traore about what, you know, he's really done and who he really is. Is this orchestrated media by Al Jazeera? If nothing, Al Jazeera should have learned way back in 1996 when they came into being that journalism needs to be real. It needs to tell the truth, especially after the work or the hack job or, you know, just basically the pieces that Western media did on the Middle East back in the 90s. Al Jazeera should have decided when they came, we're going to always tell the truth. We're going to have our facts straight. We're going to speak from a position of non-biasness. That's not what they chose to do. They chose to attack Captain Ibrahim Traore. And again, why? And why now? Why now? All right? So I'm not saying that this is, you know, a coincidence. I'm saying outright that this is orchestrated. That's what I'm saying. All right? And I'm pretty sure Captain Ibrahim Traore would say the same thing. All right? And with that, along with that, I'm saying pay attention to timing, people, because timing tells you what a story is actually about. All right? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That being said, I want to drop this clip and let you guys hear exactly what Al Jazeera has said about Captain Ibrahim Traore. All right? Now, before I do, as always, please like, share, follow, comment, and subscribe. You are tapped in. This is the art of political discourse, and this is how we do it. All right? Let's get to this clip. Very insightful. Very insightful. All right, here we go. Yeah, sad thing that they would do this. Okay, now here's a piece, Al Jazeera in its day-old. Ibrahim Traore, why Burkina Faso's popular leader faces a reality test. Traore's sovereignty message has won support across Africa, but his record at home faces scrutiny. Make that even make sense. There's a reason all over Africa people are supporting. Wait a minute, let me rephrase that. There's a reason that people all over the world are supporting Ibrahim Traore. And that reason is based upon the achievements he's accomplished in Burkina Faso in 4 years, as opposed to all the years Europe, UK, France, and United States have been in the Sahel or on the African continent, but particularly in the Sahel. This is why he's popular. He's actually doing something, and he's doing it for the Burkina Bay people as much as he is doing it for all of those on the fringes, on the outside, looking in. Great job. Great job. All right, there he goes. OUAGADOUGOU, Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traore, a 38-year-old army officer who seized power in a 2022 coup, has become one of Africa's most recognizable leaders, hailed by supporters as a symbol of sovereignty and resistance to foreign influence. Now they're going to say, but his image has grown. But while his image has grown across the continent, his rule has also been marked by increasing restrictions on political activity, persistent insecurity, and questions over whether his message of national renewal can translate into lasting change. Again, you know, the piece you could tear this piece up. This, I think, was written by an amateur or someone who was given a job to do and to say the things that they, you know, needed out there in order to discredit Captain Ibrahim Traore. I just have to say that, you know. I have to say that. You know, his rule has been marked by increasing restrictions on political activity. That would make sense based upon the fact that the political climate before he got there was in such disarray. There was so much corruption. There was so much foreign intervention, meddling, interference. There was, so much a pillaging of the country's resources. And all that was allowed through the political base that was put in place. Yeah, by all means, he should have got rid of democracy or Western style democracy in order to save his country and his people. It makes all the sense in the world to me. You know. So in April, Traore told Burkina Faso people to forget about democracy, arguing that the country was in a revolutionary phase rather than a democratic one. Doesn't that make sense? A coup is pretty much a revolution, right? And in a revolution, or revolutions, they start or they are orchestrated, they happen because the people are dissatisfied with the reigning government and its policies, its politics. That makes sense. So the objective then is to go in and dismantle all that we know or that they see is wrong with the political apparatus as much as it is with the country. That makes sense, man. Who wrote this piece? Who okayed it, Anyway, there that was, He said, forget about democracy. The country was in a revolutionary phase. The remark came after his government extended the military-led transition and dissolved political parties, signaling that a return to civilian rule was no longer an immediate priority. Great move, stroke of genius. See, all that foreign influence politically was done away with. Remove the foreign influence by removing the political structure that brought it there. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. All right? That it just does. But that wasn't the only thing he removed, And as a result, look at where they are now. But the piece goes on to say, the contrast between Traore's growing international reputation and the realities inside Burkina Faso has become one of the defining questions of his presidency. Burkina Faso has been at the center of the Sahel security crisis for nearly a decade. Keep that in mind. They admit this. For nearly a decade, Burkina Faso have been in this crisis with so-called terrorists or jihadists, who, by the way, it's alleged that are receiving funding from France, the EU, funding and support, money, weapons, and logistics. All right? So while France was there, this problem existed. While France had troops there, they did not get rid of the jihadist or terrorist problem in 10 years. He's done more in 4 years with that issue than France did in 10 years. And Al Jazeera will write this piece. So yeah, that security crisis had been around for nearly a decade, with armed groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, expanding across large parts of the country and overwhelming successive governments. See, they were bogged in. They were all over the country. While the French military, who was supposed to be there to prevent this type of thing, did nothing. Now, it's alleged that the French military was really only there to protect the mines, the resources. That's really what's being said. That's being alleged. Okay, so, but again, why has Traore become so popular? Question mark. They're going to say Traore's appeal extends well beyond Burkina Faso because he has tapped into wider frustrations across parts of Africa over foreign military intervention, economic dependence, and political elites seen as disconnected from citizens. That's part of it. Since taking power in a coup in September 2022, he expelled French troops, strengthened ties with Russia, promoted local industry and agriculture, and presented economic self-reliance as a national priority. His government has joined other military-led governments in the Sahel region, moving away from traditional Western security partnerships. They've done themselves a service, a great service, I would add, you know. But anyway, he says, the writer who did this piece, his speeches frequently invoke the legacy of former revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara, all right, who ruled Burkina Faso from 1983 until his assassination in 1987, and who remains a symbol of anti-imperialism and self-reliance across Africa. What does that tell you? This has been going on for a very long time. Foreign intervention has been going on in Burkina Faso, in fact, in Africa, on the continent for a very long time. So just imagine what you have to go through to eradicate all that's been in place, the roots that have grown into the soil of the continent, how deep you have to dig to pull those roots up, kill them, dry them out, and plant new seeds for growth that will benefit the people of the continent, not foreign interests. A lot of work. A lot of work, Al Jazeera, has to be applied to change all the damage, to bring about something new, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the continent. And that's the beauty in what he's doing. He's inspiring the youth in these other countries and even some politicians to look differently, to go about independence differently, to establish for their countries sovereignty that is ran and ruled by the people in those countries on that continent. Come on, Al Jazeera. Come on. Now, you know, it's sad that this will come from Al Jazeera, but then again, when you think about it, it really isn't. Al Jazeera is, as we know, I've pointed this out, a Muslim publication, a Muslim media source. And if any of you are willing, go and do your research on Muslim intervention, Muslim interaction, Muslim invasion, Muslim enslavement of the continent of Africa. Do your research. So he goes on to say, what's happening in Burkina Faso is a genuine decoupling of legitimacy from performance. All right? What's happening in Burkina Faso is a genuine decoupling of legitimacy from performance. All right? Traoré has restructured the security architecture around sovereignty rather than efficacy. All right? That's good work. That's good work. That is good work. So that goes on to say, what has changed under his government? Traoré has sought to turn his sovereignty message into policy, with his government prioritizing local production, state control of strategic sectors. That would be the mining, for resources, things of that nature, their gold and other resources that they have. Now they are nationalizing this stuff, and they're saying, hey, this belongs to the people. They're taking ownership of their country. This is what real sovereignty should look like. It should not look like foreign interference, foreign involvement, foreign intervention. It should look like those who come from that country should be the ones who govern it, make the decisions for it that would benefit the people in that country. That just makes sense. So state control of strategic sectors and reduce dependence on foreign partners. You know who those partners were? The French government, the UK, the United States, the IMF, the World Bank. Oh man, with friends like those, You don't need enemies. You don't need enemies. So officials say Burkina Faso has increased investment in agriculture, particularly in staple crops such as rice and maize, while encouraging, and let me add, they got all kind of agriculture growing. Bananas, pineapples, tomatoes, cashews, you name it, they're producing it. And they're doing it when they were told it would be impossible to do. All right. Now, all this is being done, or these investments in agriculture are being done while encouraging local manufacturing and processing industries. They're building their own processing plants. They're also in production or in the works of building their own refinery, gold refinery, or gold processing plants. Beautiful. In fact, I think they may already have one or two. Might be working on the third. Who knows? The government has also promoted infrastructure projects and sought greater national involvement in strategic economic sectors. And those projects, they can be pointed out, you know, like I said, France had been there. France was a colonizer of the Sahel for decades, even after they supposedly won their independence from European powers like France. They have no roads, or they had no roads. They have roads now. They have infrastructure, hospitals, colleges. Come on, ALJAZEERA. So supporters argue that these measurements are laying the foundation for greater economic independence and ensuring that national resources are directed towards domestic development rather than external interests. This is why France is mad. This is why France needs Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to be, again, destabilized. This is why we see this influx or this activity amongst jihadists, JNIM, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. You know, they need to destabilize, stop this progress. France needs that to happen. Otherwise, France, that cash cow that they had access to, is gone permanently. Permanently. France is in a situation as we speak because of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso saying, enough's enough, time to leave. No more uranium, no more gold, no more bauxite, no more of that stuff you guys need so bad to light your cities, your country, that fills up your coffers with African gold. No more of that. You gotta love it. So now the question is also, or it goes on to say the government has also expanded the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland program, a government-backed civilian force created to support the military in areas where the state has struggled to maintain security. Smart move. The people should also defend the land. They should feel obligated. It's a duty. Yeah. So, and the question is being asked, has security improved? This remains the central test of Traore'S presidency. Okay? That's what they're saying. So since 2022, the military has intensified operations across the country and repeatedly announced the recapture of towns and strategic positions. Government officials say security has improved in several areas and that the state has regained ground previously controlled by armed groups. Traore'S presidency is ultimately judged by whether security has improved. And this is what Bature Salama told Al Jazeera. And this is a guy that's out of Ghana, Anyway, he is a private investigator and security intelligence specialist from Ghana, probably trained by some French intelligence agency, maybe Mossad, maybe the CIA, who knows? All right? But this is what he's saying. He is a private investigator and he's a security intelligence specialist from Ghana, whose base is near Ghana, near the Burkina Faso border. If I was Ibrahim, I'd watch him too. I'd watch him too. But anyway, he goes on to say that the Burkina Faso continues to face serious threats from armed groups linked to JNIM, Al Qaeda, and ISIS, as well as ISWA. All right. With millions of people requiring humanitarian assistance, more than 2 million displaced, and limited independent verification of official security claims. Now and again, those 2 million people weren't displaced or put in that position as a result of Ibrahim Traore'S coming into power in 2022. Those people had already been displaced, as he mentioned in the piece. For 10 years, jihadists and terrorists have been terrorizing, murdering, displacing the Burkina Bay people, as well as the Malians and the Nigerians. That's a fact. So, you know, the piece it's an attack piece. It's an attack piece. And then it goes on to ask about political freedoms. Okay, Traore'S government has increasingly moved beyond a military transition towards a broader consolidation of power. In January, authorities dissolved political powers and suspended political activities, arguing that they fueled division during a period of national crisis. Very smart. The move followed an earlier extension of the military transition, effectively postponing a return to electoral politics. Very smart. The tightening of state control has also extended beyond politics. All right. It says that last month, Traore had declared the battle has begun. And what he was referring to was his edict, the decree he made that there will be no Sharia law in Burkina Faso, period, point blank. And in fact, there are going to be some laws and rules laid in place or put in place that even practicing Muslims as well as imams have to obey. One of those things that caused this problem with Imam KINDO was the law that was passed that praying in the middle of intersections and streets where commerce is taking place, businesses attempting to flow, would not be tolerated anymore. It would be a crime. That's what got KINDO arrested initially. He wanted to come out and speak against that. And in his way, wanted to create dissension. Smart move, Traore. Smart move. But anyway, he did say this last month that the battle has begun against Muslim scholars he accused of promoting religious extremism following the adoption of a new religious freedoms law and the arrest of several prominent Sunni clerics. All right, the confrontation was significant because many Muslim leaders had previously been viewed as part of Traore's support base. But see, I think that's where everybody gets it wrong. You know where his base lies? With the people. And I know that a lot of these clerics, these imams, these sheiks, think that the people got their back more than they got the back of an individual who has brought to the table sovereignty, independence, dignity, respect. That's something none of them have brought to the Burkina Bay people. None of them. All they brought to them were rules and laws based upon religion or faith. Look it up. Look it up. For those who doubt, look it up. But anyway, that base, the people, the Burkina Bay people, is his strongest base. Not the Muslim clerics, not those who want a caliphate or a Sharia law established to run the government. That's not his base. His base are the people who have been suffering under the boot of colonizers, foreign investors, corporations, governments, and clerics who support jihadists and terrorism, murder of the people. Come on, Al Jazeera. It don't make sense. Okay, anyway, critics warned that the measures risk weakening religious independence and freedom of expression. Listen, all he did was created a secular government. In other words, he told them This government will serve everybody. Now, there's a difference between a secular government and one of Sharia law. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. One is actually biased and prejudiced. One is not. One is all inclusive. One is not. So when he passed that law that it would be a secular government, that's when all hell broke loose, because the idea was, the thought was in the minds of these clerics, these imams, you know, all these people in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, who thought that they were going to be able to bring Sharia law into effect in Burkina Faso. Those thoughts, those hopes, those goals, those dreams, whatever, were dashed. They were eliminated. They were canceled. That's the problem. That's the problem. And this is why you see this piece from Al Jazeera on Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traore. So what they're actually trying to do is create dissension. Now, they're trying to filter in. They're trying to get to the people who support him. They already know the imams and the clerics are against him now. This is the play. Now they got to get to the people. As it says, critics warned that the measures risk weakening religious independence and freedom of expression, which is not true. You're supposed to pray. Do you know Burkina Faso has thousands of mosques? And so his question was, if we have all these mosques, why are you guys praying in the streets? Right? You have the freedom to pray. You have the freedom of religion. But why are you doing it in the streets and you have mosques? What are mosques for? I get his point. Anybody with some sense should. But there that was, all right? While authorities argued that extraordinary steps were necessary during a national security emergency, and this is what the government said, hey man, we're doing this because we understand that we're in a fight still. We booted out the French. We booted out the US. We booted out the UK. We booted out the EU. We booted out NGOs. We got rid of Bill Gates and all the others like him. Now we're going to get rid of these people who are trying to actually control and run the country according to a religion. And he said no. He's a Muslim, and he said no. Because the whole country, the populace, the Burkina Bay people are not all Muslim. Great move. Anyway, so they're going to say, does the record match the reputation? Traore'S rise has been built on a powerful message that Burkina Faso should have greater control over its security, resources, and political direction. For many supporters, he represents a generation of African leaders willing to challenge former colonial powers, reject Western security frameworks, and demand greater control over national resources. He doesn't just demand it. He's taking it. He's taking it. That's what he's done. So now, in a region where frustration with foreign intervention has been growing, that message has resonated strongly. But the strength of Traore'S image has also created a difficult test. Whether symbolic victories can translate into improvements in people's daily lives. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Come on, Al Jazeera. If the measure is sovereignty, political messaging, and the ability to inspire supporters, Traore has achieved remarkable influence in a short period and become one of Africa's most recognizable political figures. If the measure is security, humanitarian conditions, and political freedoms inside Burkina Faso, the picture is far more complicated. Why? Because you say so? Because that's the thinking most of you have? It's a Western way of thinking? Is that why? Yeah, sure, there's complications. That complication is the fact that France allowed terrorists and jihadists to roam the land for over 10 years. When the agreement for French forces being on Burkina Faso, Malian soil, and Niger's soil, it was to eliminate that threat, that security threat. Never happened. So of course it's going to be complicated removing these people who are also being sponsored by the same people who are supposed to remove them from the land. Of course it's going to be complicated. And of course armed violence continues. Displacement remains widespread, and questions remain over whether military rule can deliver lasting stability. Of course those questions still exist. You know why? Because those issues, those things you're naming, are being pushed, are being sponsored and supported by outside influences, forces. All right? That's why. Who's arming these people? Who's arming them? Where are they getting the money to pay these jihadists? And if there's such jihadists, why do they need to be paid? Who's giving them logistics? Come on. So it's a fight within a fight. It's a fight to get these jihadists to do away with them, to kill them off. To kill them off so that the Burkina Faso people, the Malian people, and the Nigerian people can live decent lives. It's a fight. It's worth it. But then there's that other fight waiting in the shadows, while they're fighting this frontline fight with these jihadists. Those who are really pushing the envelope are sitting over in Europe trying to figure out when and where or how would it be best to attack, to take back what they think they own. Come on, Al Jazeera. Yeah, of course. Of course it's complicated. You know, but like I say, the people are speaking in defense, not just of Ibrahim Traore, their leader, but of the country of Burkina Faso. It's a quote here that said, "We are proud to see a leader who stands up to the West and wears our traditional clothes." That pride is real. A youth leader in OUAGADOUGOU said this. Excuse me. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Excuse me. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me your thoughts on this. Is what he doing make sense? Has it panned out? And why has Al Jazeera decided to do this hit piece? Why now? What's in it for them? Who they're supporting? What is this piece really based upon? I think that's the question. That's the question. Is this thing in existence, this piece, because he's cutting the pipeline of Sharia teachings and law from establishing itself in Burkina Faso? Is this why we see this piece? Probably so. More than likely so. You know? And again, who really loses? Those Gulf states who teach and train these youngsters who leave Burkina Faso and other countries on the continent to go learn Sharia law, to learn it and then take it back to their homeland and do what with it? Push it how? To what extent? Yeah. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. That hit piece by Al Jazeera, they should be ashamed of themselves. However, I'm pretty sure that that's not something they're going to suffer from. You know, they're not going to suffer from that. But another thing is for sure, Ibrahim Traore is doing things in that country that have never been done before. That has not been done before by powers supposedly greater than him. He's fighting wars on every front and is succeeding. That's the determination, not just of the man, but of the Burkina Bay people. That's what's not being addressed. That piece should not have focused on Ibrahim Traore. It should have focused on the failures, the exploitation, you know, the disrespect and the pillaging of those other world powers that took advantage of that situation, that helped create the so-called jihadists and terrorists. That piece should have covered everything and everybody else except for Ibrahim Traore and the Burkina Bay people who are striving to understand, to experience what sovereignty and independence is truly like. Shame on Al Jazeera. Tell us what you think in the comments, all right? Drop your thoughts in there. Like I say, you can go find that piece on Al Jazeera. I did, and again, I think it was an attack piece, no doubt about that. It also sheds light on who Al Jazeera supports and what its support is really based upon. For the most part, the whole piece talked about religion being attached, religion throughout the whole piece. That's a fact. It did not talk about the great, grand accomplishments achieved, not just by Ibrahim Traore, but the Burkina Bay people. It didn't talk about their participation in real time in terms of building roads, hospitals, colleges, factories, plants, processing plants, going to the fields in time of harvest, time of planting, the people camping out on the street, first line of defense against anyone who would want to attempt to take their leader from them, someone they love and respect. A people who is more diligent about the protection of their leader and the progress and appreciative of the progress he's brought to the Burkina Bay people. Come on, Al Jazeera. It's an attack piece. It was an attack piece. All because Ibrahim decided that it would be a secular nation, not one ruled by Sharia law. Tell us what you think in the comments, man. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. You have been tapped in.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.